So, a while back, like over a year ago, I made a Deltarune prediction video. Since then, a few things have happened, so we're doing a sequel. Just like last time, this is going to be a combination of what I think the game is implying is happening next and what I think will be cool to see. So while there's definitely some theorizing happening, not every claim I make will be backed up by evidence. But I've got some real interesting ideas, especially for how the game will end. So let's get into it. Chapter 5 probably has the least to speculate on. There's already a notable amount of confirmation as to what's going to happen. The light world will include the festival, the dark world will be in the Flower King, and it will feature Asgore prominently. More likely than not as the final boss too. Azrael might show up in this chapter, that'd be cool. To be honest, I really have no idea how he'd play into the larger story, besides him and Chris definitely needing a heart-to-heart eventually. I think this is probably going to be a more traditional Dark World, like Chapter 2, and the secret boss will probably be one of Asgore's special flowers, who might even take on a personality like Flowey did in Undertale. I've seen a lot of fan concepts revolving around the secret boss only being fought by Ralsei, and I think that's a really fun concept, especially if it's a Flowey-like being. Even if the personality doesn't match up to Flowey, I do think it's going to be at least one of the flowers, if not all 7 fighting together. After all the secret bosses so far are thematically about freedom in some form or another, and all the flowers are literally trapped in a cage. I also have a few ideas for how the weird route is going to go down, but I'll save those for when I'm done talking about the normal route. So, Chapter 6. I think it's going to take place in Noelle's house. There's too much random junk all over the house for it to not become a dark world. I think there's a lot of potential for Christmas-themed enemies, and I also think it's more than possible that Caddy will show up in this dark world to be a main antagonist throughout most of the chapter. Just going off the general pattern of a Lightner shown to have issues, like Susie's bullying, Noelle's shyness, Birdley's birdliness, and more likely than not, Asgore in his just absolute abysmal handling of his divorce. I think Caddy's big flaw is her opinion of Susie. I know it's common for people to be afraid of her, but Caddy talks about Susie like she's the devil. I think if in Chapter 6 Caddy learns to befriend Susie, it could be the start of solving Susie's main problem of her negative treatment from Lightners. And Caddy could even approve of Susie and Noelle's relationship, as little as that would actually mean, which could be the start of Noelle and Susie's relationship proper. I also think there's a good chance Noelle will be in the Chapter 6 Dark World, since it is her house, and she needs to find out that the Dark Worlds are real in the normal route before things end. It'll also make a lot of sense considering Carol is going to be the final boss of Chapter 6. I mean, I can just see her dual-wielding katanas in the Dark World and going absolutely beast mode. Oh yeah, I guess I should clarify. I do not think Carol is the knight. I think Tess is the knight, which is what I guessed in the last videos. And so far, I feel vindicated. Still, Carol is clearly an antagonist. Just one scene in Chapter 4 gives this idea of a person who is all about having control over others. She set herself as someone who has to be stopped, or else more people are going to get hurt. And I think that kind of has to lead to a physical confrontation eventually. Anyways, Carol as a boss. I think it might also have something to do with Chris in the normal route betraying Carol. They seemingly want to betray Carol for Susie at the end of Chapter 4. And I think Carol could also be the one to just straight up tell Susie about the soul in order to get back at Chris for betraying her or something. I think Noelle's house would also make sense as a dark world in order to get a close on Rudy's whole arc. I mean, that would mean there would be about 5 different non-fun gang Lightners, so here's my full pitch for Chapter 6's story. In Chapter 5, during the festival, Noelle learned that dark worlds are real. I assume this is probably due to Susie accidentally spilling the beans, maybe by referring to Ralsei as Ralsei, even though Noelle never said his name in Chapter 4. Then Noelle, Chris, and Susie discover the Dark Fountain in the Flower King shop. Noelle is offered by Susie to enter the Dark World with them, but declines. Asks Susie and Chris to meet up with her at her house tomorrow. Susie accepts. She and Chris enter the Dark World and probably give Asgore a life lesson about not being an obsessive loser. Chapter 6 happens, it's tomorrow, so Susie and Chris go to Noelle's house. Rudy is there. He's feeling a little bit better, but still clearly sick. Noelle and Susie talk. Noelle wants to make a dark fountain in her house in order to heal Rudy. Susie fully goes along with this. Nearby, Caddy and Jockington decide to enter Noelle's house after seeing the dark fountain form. The dark world is Christmas themed, like it's Santa's factory, with the main Darkner villain being one of those Santa things in the light world who, in the dark world, looks like a giant mecha Santa hell-bent on absolute control. And either due to Carol's wishes or due to just the mecha Santa's viewing of the fun gang as sort of improper, mecha Santa wants to get rid of them. Rudy is in the dark world, but he's not in an adventuring state, so he and Noelle stay in a sort of safe room while the fun gang look to see if there's anything they can use to heal Rudy, since normal healing magic won't work on his sickness. Maybe Noelle even has some sort of idea as to what the item might be. Either way, typical fun gang shenanigans ensue, repeatedly being stopped by Caddy and the mecha Santa in a dynamic not so different from Queen and Birdly, as Caddy told the mecha Santa she could help get rid of the fun gang or something like that, all of which she does in some stupid plan to save Noelle. Still, by the end, just like Birdly, Caddy and Susie bond and become friends, and then she helps the fun gang defeat mecha Santa and get the healing tonic or whatever for Rudy. Then Carol gets home. This leads to her, Noelle, and Rudy all finally talking. Noelle argues against Carol, Rudy takes Noelle's side, maybe Rudy even gets injured, and it'll be a similar situation to Tenna, where depending on what you do in the dark world, he can either live or become fallen down. Either way, Carol learns to stop being so controlling, Caddy learns to stop hating on people she doesn't know, and the dark fountain is sealed, the day is saved. Except when looking out the windows to the outside, there's no light. Susie briefly opens the door to the exit, only to immediately close it again. Noelle's house is the only part of hometown not trapped in a dark world. The roaring is actively happening. The chapter then ends. Brief moment of clarification before I get into talking about chapter 7 is about chapter 6's secret boss. Now, I already mentioned that I think Jockington will be in this dark world, but I didn't really mention him at all in the main story. That's because I'm making the claim that Jockington is the secret boss of chapter 6. He's a weird demon snake with too much knowledge and is probably the reason Caddy thinks so lowly of Susie. I do not trust him, but I don't think he's going to be a part of the main story. So I think he's going to be a secret boss. Probably in an area that's like a Dark World version of Dessa's room, because that seems fitting. I also think Dark World Jockington will have a beard. I don't really have a guess as to what Jockington's secret boss story will be like, but I hope with all my heart that one of the hardest fights in Deltarune is going to be Jockington. It'd be so funny, but it'd also make a little bit of sense. It's chapter 6, the weird meta stuff is going to have to start fighting the fun gang eventually, and Jockington seems to be tied into it all somehow. Knowing how Chris is going to defeat the Titan, the weird text, it could honestly be a thing of Jockington slowly being possessed by a friend. It also seems fitting that Caddy, the occult fanatic's best friend, would be some form of demon, though she probably doesn't know it. So that's my case for secret boss Jockington. A year ago, I would have called myself ridiculous, and yet here I am. So that's the end of chapter 6, with Chris having left their little unfun gang with Carol and the Knight. Susie probably knows about the soul and is probably upset about that. Perhaps there's a scene at the end in the light world where before everyone realizes that they're surrounded by darkness, where Susie and Chris have like a one-on-one chat where Susie gets mad and upset, but then Chris takes out their soul in front of her and just chucks it into the trash can or something just so they can hug Susie, or just some form of confirming their friendship is actually real, because I need that personally. But still, the soul is needed for Chris to seal the dark fountains, so we gotta go back into Chris to stop the roaring. See, the other reason I think Noelle's house is going to be the Chapter 6 Dark World is because of how far it is from the bunker and from the school compared to other notable buildings in hometown. I think the roaring will catch everyone off guard, including both Rouse and Carol, who both might have expected it to happen the next day. The first part of Chapter 7 will be going through a Dark World version of hometown, rescuing people, dealing with powerful darkners based on the buildings we didn't go through. I just simply have to believe that there will be an icy boss. Rouse will tell the fun gang to head to Castletown to solve the issue, but won't exactly say how. But eventually they reach Castletown with probably a Titan mini-boss in that highly suspicious area to the left of Castletown, where Chris and Susie first enter the Dark World, because that place is screaming Titan appearance with all its eyes and whatnots. So, once they get there, Rousey will tell Chris to seal the Castletown fountain, but I doubt Susie will actually let them go through with that plan, instead making a new plan to go through Hometown again, beat up the knight, and seal the Dark Fountain down in the bunker. Rousey protests, saying that this is the only way to change the prophecy is to sacrifice all Darkners, revealing that the last line of the prophecy is something along the lines of, "The girl's determination will bring the journeys of the three heroes to come to an end," or something along those lines, basically implying that Susie will end up getting everyone killed, which is why Rousey has been sort of treating the two like they're on death row throughout the whole game. Still, Susie convinces Rousey and also Chris to try her plan and go against the knight once and for all. So the gang makes their way to the bunker, and it's dark and hellish, but they find her. They find the knight, and it's within this fight that Des can be saved if the player has gotten all the shadow crystals. And that's another reason the fun gang has to go to Castletown first, is so the player can go to Sham and get whatever they need in order to save Des. Sham will also be Chapter 7's secret boss as a sort of prove your strength moment. So, Susie, with hope crossed on her heart, Rousey, who has probably learned to love and respect himself, and Chris, who believes in their own choices once again, face off against the final boss of Deltarune, the Roaring Knight. If defeated, the Dark Fountain in the bunker can be sealed, and the world slowly returns back into the light world, day saved. I really do believe that the normal route, both with and without the Shadow Crystals, will have some form of happy ending. I think without saving Des, Gaster will realize the experiment is over, and take the soul away from Chris, and we don't really see the conclusion after Chapter 7, just there'll be the vague knowledge that the world was saved from near destruction. But something does happen if we do save Des. Not necessarily a new ending, but an epilogue. And I do think she'll be savable. We just have to de-darkify them or whatever. The soul has already been shown to have purification powers, so maybe whatever item Sham gives us will help with that. The fun gang saves Des, weakened but alive, and isn't all gross and titany. But before they seal the fountain in the bunker, Des gets grabbed by a mysterious paw and is dragged out of the bunker. The fun gang rush out to save her, only to realize the entire sky is smiling back at them. This is the true final fight, the fight against Friend. However, the fun gang themselves can't defeat them. They're far too powerful, and probably at least somewhat intangible. That means the only way to defeat them is for us, the player, to sacrifice ourselves. Maybe there'll be a line of text in like the battle action screen where it'll be like, "It seems you discovered a new act." And that act will be to sacrifice our soul to seal away Friend, destroying our connection to Deltarune. Still, Gaster sees our actions and is somewhat moved by this. He allows the player one last adventure into the world of Deltarune, but not as Chris. As the vessel from the very beginning, it gives us the chance to talk to the characters one last time, maybe a week or so after the events of the Roaring. Not a new ending, most of this would happen in the last ending, just an epilogue. We get to see Asgore finally act like a normal human around Toriel. We see Blue Bunny match Burger Pants' freak. We see Rudy, Des, and Carol, assuming Rudy lives. We see Susie and Noelle on an actual date before they start to follow us around. We get to actually talk to Chris, who will then also follow us around. We can even go into Castletown, the only dark world left, and the only dark world there can ever be anymore. After all, the hero's journeys are at an end. We get to see Noelle and Queen interact. We see Lancer and Susie hug it out. We see Chris laughing with Tenna, assuming Tenna lived. They can't stay in the Dark Worlds forever, but they can return every now and again if they need to, before they go out into the real world. Then we head back to the bunker, and we leave. We leave Deltarune. We sever our connection with the game. The Angel's Heaven is banished, which is great, as we can finally go back into the real world. That's how Deltarune ends, with hope for tomorrow. Not just theirs, but ours. Wow, what a wonderful and joyous ending. I sure hope nothing weird happens to it. Alright. So, Chapter 5's weird route will have Susie come to the conclusion that she and Chris aren't actually friends and that something is up with Chris. This will probably happen at the festival, but she'll probably try her best to ignore the idea for most of the Dark World. Chapter 6, once again, is where things get interesting. Noelle will make the Dark World in her house on her own, without asking Chris or Susie. Chris might get a call from Carol about the fountain, or just since the gates will be open, Chris will just enter. Chris might get stopped by Susie before entering, might not. Either way, I don't think Susie will be in the Chapter 6 Dark World. However, Rouse will be in the Dark World, and considering he thought going with Noelle to the festival in the weird route was a bad idea, I wonder if at this point he'll feel certain enough that whatever we're doing is bad enough to stop. So for most of the Dark World, things will be similar, except with Noelle instead of Susie and Rouse. But at the end, instead of Carol as the final boss, it'll be Rouse. I assume in the Chapter 6 Weird Route, there will be a lot of killing, just like in the Chapter 2 Weird Route. And well, Rouse will be no different. Chapter 7 happens and the roaring once again is here. By this point, both Noelle and Chris do not fight against the player's movements. If they're still in there or not, it's hard to tell. It really is just like any other RPG. The characters follow your orders and that's it. Chris and Noelle head to Castletown. Sham tries to stop you. Des tries to stop you, and at the very end of the road is Susie, the final boss of the weird route. Megalovania plays in the background. She knows you did something to Rouse, but she isn't capable of stopping the two of you. You've grown too strong. You get to the fountain, and the soul infects it. Susie was the only one truly capable of resisting the soul, and she's gone. And now that the heroes have met their end, the angel cannot be banished. You cannot be banished. And if Noelle can get a soul, then why not the rest of Hometown? If the prophecy being broken means that the angel does not get banished, maybe the weird route actually does change the prophecy, and maybe that means we don't get banished from Deltarune after all. After the soul gets to the fountain, everything goes black, and the game changes. You can play as whatever character you want, and you can explore wherever you want. There's no more story, maybe even no more fights. The game essentially becomes like Yume Nikki. No goal, no conflict, just exploration with whichever character you want. Not like it matters though, since no personalities from any of them shine through. The game only has one ending. That's still true, with the additional epilogue if you get the Shadow Crystals, but the weird route has no ending, just the weird forever, where you can meticulously search the game for details, only finding a smattering of lore bits, none of it satisfying enough. Deltarune's final choice will be about whether you're willing to let go of the world. Deltarune shouldn't last forever. Of course, you could make it last for as long as you want, but at the end of the day, what does that say about you? Not to say doing the weird route makes you a bad person or whatever, it's still a video game. It's more than fair to explore the game, just that you eventually have to be done exploring, and when you are, you can go out into the real world and start exploring that. I think this will be the main message of Deltarune, the freedom of letting go, the freedom of being okay with tomorrow. That's Deltarune, or at least my vague interpretation of Deltarune based solely on half of the game. As much as I do enjoy my own ideas around chapters 5 through 7, it's almost definitely inaccurate in some way, which is fine. As I said last time, I'd love to be proven wrong because that means more Deltarune is out. Though I will have to say, at least in current, I feel really confident that the weird route won't end and will instead become this weird Yume Nikki thing. Even though I've really struggled figuring out how to actually word the concept, still I have no idea what's up with the eggs. Maybe if we get all the eggs, then a secret chapter 0 will unlock, and that'll be mostly for the lore. Or getting all the eggs will influence the friend fight somehow. I don't know. I was wrong about a lot last time, and I'll be wrong about a lot this time. Deltarune is waiting and I'm excited. I spent all of September making and releasing Deltarune videos, and while I'll definitely return to this game eventually, I think it's about time I let go of it for a little while and start making videos on other stuff. The next video I'm writing is for a friend about an underrated anime he likes. And then I'm going to experiment with a whole bunch of video types. All in all, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and remember, if I got even a single thing right, I will make a short about how I totally accurately predicted all of Deltarune. Thank you for watching!